good afternoon. My name's Doug Clark. I look after cloud computing for IBM in the UK and in Ireland. It's a fantastic job. I'm sure all of those of you here in the audience who spend or invested your careers in cloud computing recognize that this is one of the most exciting fields in the whole of IT at the moment. So it's a real privilege to be involved in it. So I've put my hasn't quite worked. I've put my Twitter handle there. It's @cloudstuff. So if anybody wants to follow me on Twitter, or if you want access to the white paper that a lot of this presentation revolves around, please just send me a tweet and I'll happily send you the link back to it. So just starting off, we've spent a significant amount of time in Congress so far talking about some of the issues, some of the challenges facing the IT department and business in the current economy. This is a little timeline that I hope you can see quite clearly. It's a summary of a document that's highlighted here at the bottom, which is called the CEO survey from IBM. It's something we do every 2 years. And we alternate it with a CIO survey every 2 years. And it's really interesting just to track what's affecting our customers, the leaders of enterprises, big and small, whether they're public sector or private sector. And it's just like a really good health check, a pulse, if you like, of some of the things that are challenging those senior executives. And what you can see here, I hope it comes out really clearly, is there's a line moving from 2004, when the first CEO survey happened, up until 2012, when this year's survey was published. And this was, not a small group of CEOs. This was 1,700 CEOs from around the world. So many of them will be reflected in your markets, or maybe even some of you participated in it. But what you can see here is that technology factors, in the broadest sense, are the biggest impacts in terms of their ability to grow, their ability to operate the way they want to. Okay? And it's the first time technology has really taken such a lead role. And one of the reasons for that is there are a whole suite of IT headaches associated with that chief executive C-suite role. Working around, as many of you will know, it can take 4 to 6 months to actually implement major hardware or major platforms in an organization using traditional routes. 2/3 of organizations, so that was a Forrester summary from a paper a survey they did. Moving around, 2/3 of organizations usually overrun when they're implementing a major change. That's internal data from IBM, but again, it's referencing the market rather than just our own projects. 55% of organizations experience downtime when they're putting in a major upgrade, major patch, and that's whether it's using cloud technologies or not. These are just things we have to plan for, we have to compensate for. And 70% of the resource, effort, or the budget is spent doing legacy stuff, keeping the lights on, which is probably the most significant factor of all of these elements in terms of the headache. So, I don't think necessarily that the profession signed up to that when we became IT professionals. Did we know we would be spending 70% of our effort, our time, our education, our experience, keeping the lights on, firefighting, doing day-to-day stuff, or whether we'd be doing exciting stuff? And I think we're at a pivot point with cloud. Maybe we're already on that journey, maybe many of you are already on that journey, where we've got the chance to maybe change that. And change it quite significantly. And I'm not here today to necessarily talk about the barriers to people moving towards a cloud environment. It was really interesting hearing David speak just after the lunch break about some of the potentials and some of the parallels about how maybe cloud can be used as a stimulant to help us in these tough economic times that we all face. But also, you know, the balance to that are all of the items that are sort of slowing us down in that thinking, the things that the horror stories we hear, the fear, uncertainty, doubt, the issues around security, around data privacy. You know, a lot of these items we've already discussed in the Congress so far, and they'll continue to be discussed at this Congress and future Congresses going forwards. I think the key thing to take on board here is, you know, we're not handing over the crown jewels when we consider moving over to a cloud environment. What we should be doing as professionals, whatever our business role is to do something that's fit for purpose, that's relevant to the industry, to the legislation, to the needs of that particular audience or particular type of application, and do what is correct and therefore, as I described it, fit for purpose. So it may well be, and we've heard some of the conversations today, as to whether we go public cloud, do we go private cloud, is it a hybrid, which workloads do we take first? Are some of those workloads ever going to move to cloud? And none of us know the complete answer to that. That's going to be just something that is defined by the future. We'll know by looking backwards with the hindsight that we will all develop. But there will be probably a hybrid cloud environment, I think, that will be the ultimate end point, if there is such an end point with regards to cloud. I see cloud as a journey. I think even the label cloud will probably disappear in the next 4 or 5 years or so. It'll just become business as usual. It was with e-business, if you all think back to that. So, you know, this is just something that's going to enable a huge amount of change, a huge amount of future development. What I'd like to focus more on for the 10 minutes or so that I have this afternoon is on the wow factors, as I've described them. The what if we did this? What could we do? What could it unlock for our organizations? How could we use it as a stimulant for very rapid growth? A way of leapfrogging our competition and maybe taking a lead in the market. So that's really where I would like to spend my time. And quite often the conversations tend to revolve around things like infrastructure as a service and moving my hardware and my data center environments and saving a significant amount of cost. And I think that is definitely an opportunity, whether that is by migrating it into a public cloud or into a private cloud. You can still drive a significant amount of efficiencies and benefits from doing so. We've got proof points for that. But if that's the main reason for what I'm about to go through, then I think you're missing something. I think we're all not being as ambitious as we can afford to be with regards to cloud. I think the cost savings will come. And what I'd like to describe, which is the basis of a white paper that I can send you the links to, is what else could we do? What are the benefits, the opportunities? And these are some of the characteristics, and we've heard many of them mentioned already. So it's speed, it's scalability, it's simplicity, you know, a whole range of factors here. But what do you do with that? What does that all mean? Okay? What I'd like to suggest is you can draw a graph, and on that horizontal axis, you think about the customer value proposition that you're trying to achieve. And then on the vertical axis, you think about the value chain, how do I improve, transform, and create as I migrate up the scale there. And it's as though there are 3 separate ripples on a pond. The first one we describe as optimize. The second one we describe as innovation, and the third one we describe as disruption. And it's not a negative disruption. Disruption often means something negative, but this is a positive disruption. This is a you know, putting in some freedom, some significant change that just allows you to do something for the first time, takes the brakes off, takes the friction away. So that's basically the premise. going forwards. And when we talk to either business or technical leaders, and this was a survey that we did with the Economist Intelligence Unit and the IBM Institute of Business Value, we surveyed over 570 senior executives, and that's really what's helped us come out with this set of results. The disruptors expect to outperform the innovators and the optimizers, and that performance enhancement we've tracked a couple times in my market in the UK and Ireland. That performance enhancement can be anything up to 3 times a performance impact compared to the other two. So the risk here is, if you don't take that high ground, if you don't take that ambitious position, there is a real high risk that one of your competitors, or maybe even somebody who today isn't a competitor to you, or you don't perceive them as a competitor, might take that position and steal a march on you. We were talking earlier today, this afternoon, about the managed service providers. There's quite a few managed service providers being born that were never managed service providers in the past, you know. So sometimes these competitors come from a very, very diverse set of directions. And what are they expecting to do with this business innovation? Well, the first thing to notice, compared with today versus in 3 years' time, is the size difference. I mean, this is like a double hit. Okay, we're expecting a significant amount of new business. That's expected to double. We're expecting almost a doubling of new industry. We're expecting a tripling of redesign of the industry. And we're expecting a doubling of the change of the industry role. So every one of those is quite a significant change that cloud will enable and create an environment for change. And one of the questions I asked the previous panel, it was probably being a little bit provocative of me, is what is the role of the IT department when we move into a cloud environment? Are they, you know, and I was kind of hinting, are they redundant? Do we not need them anymore? Because all these services, this 70% of keeping the lights on, if we don't need that, or it's only a certain amount of workloads, what happens with all of those skills? And my thinking on it, and the experience I've had over the last couple of years working with IBM from a cloud point of view, working with a lot of customers, public, private, small, big, you know, international, local, is actually, if you think about the value of those skills that you've got, it's massively powerful. And if you can take some of those skills and move them to the front of the plane with the business guys, where that speed, that scalability, where that agility ultimately all resides, then the power of that combination is massively powerful. Yeah, it's a huge, huge benefit. And again, that's the experience that we're seeing. So I wanted to use a few little examples. Most of them, I have to admit, are UK examples, because they're examples that I've worked with, so the ones I'm quite familiar with, because I guess there were going to be some questions afterwards, and I didn't want to have to face up to talking about clients that I knew nothing about. So I've got 8 small sort of little case studies, and we're going to have case studies after my presentation anyway, but just to try and get the mood going and maybe get you in the spirit for the awards this evening as well, just to try and get those imaginative juices going. So the first one, we start at midnight and we'll work around the clock. So here we have a high-performance computing cloud. So this is up in the north of England in Cheshire, Daresbury Labs. And this is IBM partnering, so that's quite new for IBM, not dominating. We're partnering with academia and industry and government to produce an environment for high-performance computing as a service. What does that mean? It means that many of the industry potential users, many of the academic users can for the first time have access to compute power they never ever dreamt of before, and they can buy it as a workload for a particular project for as long as they need in a multi-tenanted environment if needs be, and they can work those projects, they can run those algorithms, they can do all of that analytics, whether it's for the drugs industry, whether it's for flood defenses, whether it's for big academic projects, engineering projects. This is an environment that's going to be a honeypot for businesses all around the UK to try and drive innovative growth. And as I say, up until now, this has just been for the rich. This is an environment now that's available for most of the community. Working down, this is a really nice little example from Italy, from the University of Bari, working with the local fishing fleet in Italy that, like everybody else, is struggling in this current economic climate. And they're using their compute capabilities to build the equivalent of like a cloud marketplace that allows those fishermen to be able to sell their catches almost immediately whilst they're still out at sea, whilst they're still fresh. They're able to auction those catches, and in doing so bring fresher food to market, faster to market, and in doing so also manage to increase their revenue streams by 25%. So again, just taking some of the examples that David King shared with us earlier today, these are real life examples of industries that you might think of as being, you know, quite flat, probably very mature, you know, no place to go. Even something like the fishing industry has been going for centuries, right? Can benefit from technologies that cloud computing can bring by working closely, in this case, with the local university. Working around, another example that was cited earlier was the oil and gas industry. Well, this is an oil and gas client. I'm not allowed to name it, but this client has got major issues with health and safety, as you would expect. They have specific certifications, they have specific training programs, they've got specific audit requirements to guarantee that their workforces that are predominantly contractors, as we saw early on the slide, if those of you were sitting in on that. This is a way for that organisation to guarantee that their workforce, either direct or indirect, is trained up and is currently at the right level of status and training for health and safety, amongst other things. They're now rolling it out across all of their training requirements. Again, IBM's been using cloud computing for training people buying access to IBM technologies now for a good number of years. So anybody who's training on our software, on our platforms, will already have been using cloud computing. But this is a real example, again, of being able to take what is going to be a dead cost, in that you have to provide the infrastructure, you have to provide the capabilities, you have to provide the training. This allows you to do it within the cloud and therefore do it very, very economically. And that's working with a partner, Saba, who is the industry leader in this particular space. So again, a few nice little examples there. The top one is some legislation changes. Again, we all get impacted by legislation changes. This is actually responding to Solvency II in the insurance market. And this is a global insurance company that decided to actually use cloud, and in this case use a public cloud environment to develop a load of scenarios that allows them to work out what are the pros and cons of this new legislation. If the legislation goes this way, the legislation goes that way, how are they going to react? How are they going to structure their organization to be able to keep up with that, with those new set of rules, new set of laws, if you like. And in doing so, they've not sat back waiting for it to come to them. They've actually been out there and they've made a first mover advantage in this space. Ultimately, what they did, once they've worked with our consulting group on the public cloud from IBM, they were able to then migrate those services onto a private cloud that they built on premise to be able to meet with that demand. So again, it's just talking about what's fit for purpose. They ran the scenarios in an environment, very rapid change, able to do a lot of stuff quite inexpensively, try a whole load of new ideas, and then once they've decided what they want to do, migrate over to something that's much more industry grade, enterprise content rich. Okay. if I can move forward. There we go. Last ones in this patch. Working with Sunderland City Council here up at the top right. Sunderland City Council, again, highly depressed area of the UK. I hope anybody from Sunderland here would not mind me saying that. This is an area where there's a lot of unemployment. And what the local authorities wanted to do was to, again, optimise, save a significant amount of cost of their IT budget. But what they thought they would do is actually, once they freed up that amount of space in their data centre, they would actually, by moving towards cloud for their own local needs, they would actually use the rest of the data centre to provide a cloud bureau as an MSP, as a managed service provider, again, completely disruptive, to enable entrepreneurs in the environment to use their HR services, their finance services, their call center services, and a whole range of other bureau-type services on the cloud to attract in investment and new businesses into the market. So again, really exciting disruption brought in to actually help create new work and new environments. Moving around, working with Philips with their digital TV, their latest TV environments, again, using analytics and data on the cloud to be able to monitor consumption of data, consumption of viewing, video on demand, and all of those current things that we're all probably up to our eyes in at home with set-top boxes and stuff. But it's using that as a way of analysing what you're likely to want to watch next time and being able to propose those to you, being able to standardise and tailor advertising to your particular needs based off of your viewing habits, your hobbies and interests and things like that. So again, much more targeted, much more direct, and much more cost-effective way of defining advertising and things like that. Classroom in the cloud is a really good one. This is, again, it ties back to one of the conversations I was having at lunchtime. This is using smart cloud for social business, which is a way of webinaring. It's using interactive medias. It's using team rooms and connections as a way of providing interactive content between students, international students as well, with faculty and staff to be able to do academic or learning experiences and stuff like that, again using the cloud. And this is on a virtual desktop that will go to any device, bring your own device. It's device agnostic, if you like, and enables the IT departments to completely control the image of that particular desktop for those particular users. So again, another example of not restricting Generation Y to the templates that you particularly want to force on them. You want them to use a particular type of device or anything like that. They can use whatever they like, but you're trying to bend towards the needs of the market, but still keep the IT rigor in-house. So again, just a few examples there that might excite you, might strike a chord with your particular business needs. And the last one, which is, I've titled it Wimbledon, but it could have been Roland Garros, it could have been Flushing Meadow, or it could have been the Melbourne Open. This is a multi-tenant cloud that IBM runs on behalf of the Grand Slams and a number of other sporting events. And what we've got here is over 5 years of big data from all of those tournaments, from all of those players, where we're able to run predictive analytics on a cloud, where each one of those scenarios on court, real time, can predict, if you like, what the likely next stroke is or what the winning stroke will be. So those of you who are, tennis fans, I bet you found yourself sitting, watching the tennis perhaps on television, wondering where all those statistics come from for the commentators, but actually you've now got the power of all of that same content on your iPad or on your knee. You can sit there turfing, I think the term is now, where you're surfing while you're watching television. You can do that in parallel, and I know that scenario is being taken forward into Formula One, taken forward into football, and all of those things. So this whole concept of big data, analytics as a service, predictive analytics is actually being brought forwards now into your lounges, onto your knees. So again, it's just demonstrating the potential power of partnering for growth. So this isn't just IBM talking. This is talking about all of the things you've been hearing so far today about OpenStack, about working with business partners, maybe hosting clouds with managed service providers, not necessarily just IBM, but it's the whole point of the community that you guys represent working very closely together to drive beneficial growth for a market that we all know at the moment is pretty flat, pretty sore, and looking for any opportunities to build out. This last slide really just highlights the investments we've been making. They're quite significant. This isn't just going to be a splash in the pan. This is something that we're investing heavily in. We know a number of the vendors, the suppliers in the industry are investing equally aggressively. This is something that will change the way we approach IT going forward. It is a new era of computing, and I know that term is often bandied around, but this is quite an exciting change, and it's a change that we've been using explicitly internally. So, rather than debate whether it's public or private, the answer is hybrid anyway. What I'd like to ask you to think about, hopefully with some of those case studies today, is, you know, are you trying to optimize, or are you trying to innovate, or are you really trying to disrupt? And with that, finished. Thanks, Dalton.
Thank you very much, Doug.